Forget New Year, New You. This season is about slowing down, locking the doors, and cozying up at home with the one you really want to do nothing with. Your dog. After the holiday chaos, those quiet nights with a blanket, a podcast, and your pup feel like the reset you actually need. Ollie helps make those moments easier with fresh protein-packed meals made from real human-grade ingredients, so your dog can enjoy some quality comfort food too. Choose from 5 recipes and get a personalized plan for your dog's needs. Meals arrive perfectly proportioned with a scoop and storage container, so serving is fast and mess-free. And with Ollie's in-app on-demand health screenings, supporting your dog is easy, ensuring more cuddles for many years to come. Visit ollie.com/truecrime and use code TRUECRIME for 60% off your first box.
Hey everyone, before I get into today's episode, I just want to warn you that this case contains details and facts that are graphic and gruesome. Listener discretion is advised. There's no doubt the holidays can be stressful. Families feuding over dinner tables, talking about politics. The kitchen is crammed with people scrambling to make rich, elaborate meals. But for Lisa Guy and her husband, Joel Guy Sr., on the weekend after their 2016 Thanksgiving celebration, their kitchen would become a horror scene.
The killer took Lisa's head and carried it downstairs and took it into the kitchen. He got out a stock pot, placed her head in the pot, filled it with liquid, carried it over to the stove, covered it, turned on the stove, and left it there to cook.
A human head, Lisa Guy's head, cooking in a stew of chemicals on her own stove. That's just one of the gruesome details in the case against her son, Joel Guy Jr., a man who sat in a courtroom with his hands folded on his chest, listening to prosecutor Leslie Nasios explain to a jury that he planned this murder.
He premeditated. He made, after the exercise of reflection and judgment, made the decision to murder his parents.
This wasn't just a murder case. It was a gruesome one. A son accused of not only stabbing his parents, but dismembering their bodies and trying to dissolve their remains in acid. He turned them into what the prosecution called a diabolic stew of human remains. This case shocked everyone involved, from the Tennessee police officers who uncovered the scene to the loving daughters of Joel and Lisa Guy. The state had to prove the unthinkable, that a son could be responsible for doing such a thing to his parents. And if you're wondering if this is going to be an insanity case, I'll tell you right off the bat that it isn't, at least according to Joel's own defense attorneys. Today's case is one that boggles the mind. This is Jillian, and you are listening to Court Junkie, episode 141. Prosecutors started the case against 32-year-old Joel Guy Jr. by trying to answer the question, why would a son do this? According to his half-sister, Angela Crane, Lisa Guy was going to cut off her son financially after the holidays. Lisa and Joel Guy Sr. had already sold their house on Golden View Lane and were planning to retire to Surgoinsville, Tennessee.
And were you aware of Lisa's plans to retire?
Yes, she was excited about retiring and just spending her time. They were madly in love, so just spending time with each other.
Okay. Does she make any statements to you about her intentions with respect to the support of her son, the defendant?
She did on one of my trips back home in October. She, Dad, and I were talking out in the garage, and she had stated that they were going to retire, and it was time for Joel Michael to stand on his own 2 feet. He was an adult.
Joel Guy Jr., or Joel Michael as his family called him, was living in Baton Rouge, Louisiana at the time of the murders. His parents had supported him for the 10 years he had been living there, taking classes at Louisiana State University. Joel was born in Baton Rouge and stayed there after his parents moved to Knoxville. Even though he was far away, by all accounts, he was still very welcome at his parents' home. He had his own key and his own garage door opener. He even had his own room upstairs where he stored clothes, furniture, collectibles, and books for school. Joel's other half-siblings, including Michelle Tyler, backed up Angela's story, saying Lisa was planning on cutting off her son's finances. Michelle spoke about Joel's out-of-character behavior during the family's recent holiday celebration.
This day was a little different. It was always more, the typical time with Dad and Lisa was more laughing and banter, but if Joel Michael Jr. was there, he wasn't ever hanging with us doing that banter. He would be in his room.
Okay.
Except for on Thanksgiving.
And at some point, did he interact, though, with your children?
The Thanksgiving was different. The Thanksgiving was completely different. The moment that I arrived, Joel Michael Jr. was talking to us. And so, he had never, I'm not sure Joel Michael Jr. knew my kids' names. And so, for him to talk to them was odd.
Michelle noted that he was acting differently this holiday season, even giving away childhood toys to his nieces and nephews. His behavior may have been odd, but it didn't seem like a cause for alarm. Joel always attended the family Thanksgiving celebration. The family was together and things seemed just fine. Michelle left with her children and boyfriend on Thanksgiving evening. She was heading home and expected Joel to drive back to Louisiana the next day. She said her goodbyes, not knowing it would be the last time she saw her parents.
Yes, I have an employee that has not reported for work today, and highly unlike her. I've tried calling her home number, I've tried calling cell phone, and can't get a hold of her. What can we do about that? Can somebody go by and check on them?
On November 28, 2016, Lisa Guy's boss, Jennifer Whited, called the police for a welfare check. Lisa hadn't shown up for work in the HR department of Jacobs Engineering. When two detectives arrived at the home on Golden View Lane in Knoxville, Tennessee, they knocked on the door. No response. They noticed a smell coming from inside the home and decided it warranted investigating. Gaining access through an automatic garage door opener, the police entered the home. What they uncovered was a scene so horrifying it made them feel physically ill.
So the garage door comes up. Detective McCord is in front of me. I'm behind Detective McCord. The other two officers are behind me. As we enter the garage, you can feel an intense heat coming out of the garage area.
That was Detective Stephen Ballard of the Knox County Sheriff's Department. On the witness stand, he noted the intense heat of the house. Heaters were plugged in around the house, and investigators would later document the thermostat. It had been turned up to 92 degrees. In the stifling heat, police also noticed chemicals and perishable groceries from Walmart on the floor, weapons on the dining room table, and blood on the walls. When the officers went upstairs, they discovered the dismembered bodies of 61-year-old Joel Sr. and 55-year-old Lisa Guy. Detective Ballard saw something down the hallway on the second floor. Hands. But they weren't attached to a human body. They were the hands of Joel Sr., on the ground, clasped together in the prayer position. Detective Jeremy McCord was another initial officer on the scene, exploring the home.
But I made the decision to turn and go into what eventually I learned is the master bedroom.
Okay. So before you go into the bedroom, you observe what you believe to be human hands present down the hallway, which
Yes.
is that the exercise room?
Yes.
Okay. And upon viewing those hands, does that change how you're feeling at all?
It's gut wrenching, and I went straight to what would have been my next threat area at this point, which would have been the bathroom.
And before we get into the bathroom, the materials that are on the floor that we've seen in the pictures thus far, a wide array of tools and lights and such, did that alarm you at all as a law enforcement officer? How did you perceive seeing those items on the floor? I
had absolutely no idea what I was walking into.
Okay. So you made it through the master bedroom. Let's talk about what you experienced in the master bathroom.
I went in the master bathroom, and the only thing I saw were two tubs with what appeared to be body parts liquefying.
Okay. Did you have occasion to notice if there was a heater on in that bathroom, sir?
It was hot in there. It was hotter in there than most places. I didn't look at the heater at that time, General.
After discovering the body parts, the officers called for backup. They turned their attention to the dog barking in one of the rooms upstairs. They had heard the dog barking from outside. They said the dog seemed tired, but he was alive. The officers then decided to check the kitchen on the way out. That's when they discovered the head of Lisa Guy cooking in a pot of chemicals on the stove. The scene was unforgettable. Just from that initial walkthrough of the Guy home, the evidence was already piling up. When techs arrived on the scene, they found bottles of muriatic acid, sewer cleaner, liquid fire, isopropyl alcohol, and hydrogen peroxide. That list of supplies led investigators to a local Walmart where they secured video footage of Joel Guy Jr. purchasing some of the products they found. Investigators interviewed some of the family members, and they discovered that Joel had stayed with his family during Thanksgiving. He then became their number one suspect. Investigators didn't know it at the time, but Joel had since returned to Baton Rouge. Records show he visited his campus's medical center to treat cuts on his hands. He told the doctors and nurses that he had, quote, tumbled down 3 steps carrying breakables. 3 years later, during a deposition hearing, he would change his story, saying that he got the cuts from an altercation with his parents. Joel said he sought treatment in Louisiana because he did not have health insurance, but that he always intended to return to Knoxville, where he left his computer and backpack. He said he did drive back to Knoxville, and when he spotted his parents' home, it was surrounded by police tape. He didn't approach the police on the scene and instead turned his car around and headed back to Louisiana. But it didn't take long for authorities to find him in Baton Rouge and arrest him for the brutal murder of his parents. Joel Guy Jr. was arrested on November 29, 2016. This is what police suspected was at least 3 days after the killings. Joel's rise from son to suspect happened quickly, but a jury wouldn't hear the case against him for almost 4 years. During those 4 years, Judge Steve Sword determined that evidence seized at Joel's apartment in Baton Rouge couldn't be used to prove the state's case. Judge Sword said the search warrant didn't establish a clear link between the Knox County murders and his apartment. Although he was apprehended there after the bodies were discovered, police did not prove he had entered the apartment after it took place. So everything in Joel's Baton Rouge apartment was off limits. Blood, bodily fluids, fiber, and hair evidence were all out of reach for the prosecutors in this case. And so the state collected other evidence as the years passed, including video of Joel buying what prosecutors argued were used in the murder of his parents. The state established a timeline of Joel's purchases, paid all in cash. On November 7, 2016, Joel purchased gloves, a spray bottle, and an iron pipe at a Lowe's and Home Depot in Baton Rouge. On the same day, he bought muriatic acid, liquid fire, and an iron pipe from an Ace Hardware. A few weeks later, on November 19, 2016, he bought a knife from Academy Sports. Then, on November 21st, he purchased large plastic tubs from Walmart. This was his last purchase disclosed in the Baton Rouge area. These tubs he bought in Baton Rouge were similar to the ones in which his parents were found. His half-sister would testify she saw these tubs in his car when he arrived for Thanksgiving. The last bit of surveillance footage came from a Walmart in Knox County. Joel was seen leaving a Walmart on November 26th, the suspected day of the murders. He had a bandage on his hand and had purchased medical supplies, including isopropyl alcohol and hydrogen peroxide.
What does Joel Guy Jr. tell us when he goes to Walmart? He tells us there was a struggle. And ladies and gentlemen, you have this video for consideration. It's in evidence. I would ask you to look at his left hand and his inability, essentially, to use it. Same medical supplies that are ultimately found in the guest bathroom, upstairs level of 11434 Golden View Lane. There's so much of a struggle that Mr. Guy cannot pull his wallet out. If you see his hands, it's evident there was a struggle.
Prosecutor Leslie Nasios pointed out Joel was struggling on surveillance footage, trying to get his wallet out of his pocket with a bandaged hand. The most chilling part of this video is that someone else was captured on video 3 hours before Joel, his mother. When this video of Lisa was taken, she had no idea her husband was being murdered at their home and that she was the next target. The last image of Lisa Guy is surveillance footage of her buying the groceries investigators found rotting on her kitchen floor. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, a jury wasn't able to sit down to hear the case against Joel Guy Jr. until September 28, 2020, 6 months after originally planned. The defendant entered the courtroom wearing a face shield and sipping small bottles of water as the prosecutors filed through the evidence. A forensic pathologist analyzed the scene. A forensic anthropologist and a DNA analyst were brought in front of the jury to go through the mountain of gory evidence. According to the DNA analyst, Joel's DNA was collected from his father's nail clippings. His palm print was also lifted from the guest bathroom sink. His thumbprint was found on Clorox wipes, and the print from his right middle finger was found on a box of gloves. Of course, finding Joel's fingerprints was important, but not the most convincing piece of evidence. After all, he had admitted to being in the house for Thanksgiving. Prosecutors figured they needed more evidence. One thing they most likely were not counting on finding was something they called the Book of Premeditation. This is the book prosecutors say contained Joel's step-by-step plan to kill and dismember his parents. It was a notebook found in the Guy home. A forensic investigator named Rachel Sandlin read the notebook on the witness stand.
Minimize things I touch throughout visit. Wear gloves and socks to prevent fingerprints and footprints. Drop something down the garbage disposal to break it. Get him on the ground fixing it. Kill him with the knife. Clean up mess from him before she gets home. Kill her with knife. There's a part that's crossed out. Kill dog after.
What's
and
written
then
above that?
Leave alive.
We now know that the dog was found safe at the crime scene when the police entered. Forensic investigator Rachel Sandlin continued her reading of the Book of Premeditation.
Place her in shower, and then with dog appears to be crossed out. Turn on hot water and point at her to get rid of forensics. Remove her clothes and take them with me for disposal. Place him in plastic bin and use it to get him into the upstairs bathroom. Cut off his arm and plant his flesh under her fingernails. Place her hand with his DNA so that his DNA is not washed away by the shower. Use sodium hydroxide to destroy his soft tissue and soften bones for transport. Baste once every hour to accelerate. Flush sodium hydroxide down the toilet. wash out bin with handheld shower head, and then direct handheld into toilet to flush everything out of the pipes and into the public waterway. Douse killing rooms, kitchen with bleach. Place hair curler with flammable paper and flammable containers of gasoline in 4 locations. His killing room, her killing room, his bathroom, her bathroom. Wipe down areas near killing rooms and bathrooms. Turn heaters up to 90 degrees to melt fingerprints and dry everything. Set her phone to send me a text message late Sunday to prove that I was in BR and she was alive, in quotation marks. Leave, and I can't read the word that's marked out, through front door and wipe down doorknobs. Timer for flammables set for Friday at 10 a.m. Sunlight masks fire, but not smoke. Everyone at work, so they can't report it.
Some of the details written in the notebook corresponded with the state's evidence. Details like place her in the shower and turn up the heat to 90 degrees. There were body parts liquefying in the master bathroom, and the investigators clocked the thermostat of the home at 92 degrees. Prosecutor Leslie Nasios explained why the jury should link this notebook to Joel.
And I particularly want to talk about the notebook because, I think what Agent Lowe told you was that she examined the notebook and took swabs from the place most likely to leave touch DNA evidence. And that was the surface of the notebook, which is, I don't know if I would call it slick, but it's something that she, as an expert and as somebody who takes samples and knows where to look and how to look for DNA deposits, she picked the most likely place, and she found it. She found the defendant's DNA on the notebook, and circumstantially, ladies and gentlemen, when you consider that notebook came from a backpack that was found in the room where his sister testified that he was staying on the Thanksgiving holiday, it makes sense that it's the defendant's notebook and the defendant's writing. I would also point out to you that inside that backpack were several books that you saw in Technician Sandlin published to you. And on the inside of those books was the defendant's name, Joel Guy. So the books that were in the backpack belonged to him. The notebook had his DNA on it, and the backpack was found in the room where he was staying. So you don't have to be, just an expert in logic to make the connections that the notebook is his. But I would also like for you to consider the writing itself in the notebook, and there are references in those writings. Despite the fact that there's no handwriting expert here. And if we did have one, the defense would be saying that that's junk science and you can't prove it. But there are references in the notebook that indicate that the person who is writing this is the defendant. Why else would he say that his DNA would be found inside the house?
The notebook, which prosecutors claimed was written by Joel, was presented to the jury. And it was the closest the jury had to possibly hearing from Joel himself, assuming they believed the prosecution that it was in fact his. Until a recorded jailhouse phone call was played between Joel and his former roommate, Michael McCracken. It's a little difficult to hear, but don't worry, I'm going to recap everything after each section.
Well, I've pretty much fucked everything up. I don't really have much of a chance of being happy anymore. But you do. You do. Eventually you're going to meet somebody, and you claim that I haven't been an albatross or anything before, but I certainly would be now. It's me in freaking prison. On that basis, I think you should probably just sort of consider me dead.
Here, Joel says he pretty much fucked everything up, that he doesn't have a chance of being happy anymore, but that Michael does. He urges Michael to consider him dead and to move on with his life. He then says that he's not going to try and initiate contact anymore, but that he wants Michael to be happy. Michael responds that he doesn't know what to say.
I mean, I don't know if there is anything to say. I'm in here. Tell me I'm a fucking idiot. Tell me, why did I do this? Blah, blah, blah. How could you? I mean, have stream of consciousness about anything and everything related or not. Anything I just said. I just did word vomit at you just now. So, I mean, word vomit at something real.
Joel tells him that there isn't anything to say, that Michael could tell him he's a fucking idiot and ask why he would do this. How could he? Michael says it hurts his heart that Joel has been his best friend for his entire adult life, and he doesn't know that would ever change, regardless of what Joel did. It then sounds like Joel starts to tell him that it wasn't him when the time runs out on their phone call.
1 minute remaining.
Michael then says he's not totally surprised. Then they have an exchange where Michael says he's mourning him like he's dead, and that it's taken everything he has to process this and to maintain his sanity. Joel says he thinks about Michael all the time, and that Michael was the only good thing in his life.
I mean, I'm not fully surprised. I don't know. I don't know what to say. All of that aside, I am angry and lost and confused and disappointed and upset and mourning you like you're dead, even though I'm talking to you on the phone, and I don't. It's taking everything I have to process and maintain my sanity. I mean, that is the biggest thing here, is that I think of you all the time. You were the only good thing in my life. All the crap in the apartment. You're the only thing on this?
You were the only good thing in my life. Michael McCracken was Joel's best friend. On cross-examination, the defense attorney asked questions about what he knew about Joel's family.
So probably, is it fair to say that maybe for at least half of that 10 years you've been his roommate?
Sure.
Know him pretty well?
Yeah.
I think you described him as your best friend during that period of time?
Yes.
All right. His parents lived in Luling, is that right? Luling, Louisiana?
Yes.
How far is Luling from Baton Rouge?
About an hour, maybe.
And during that 10-year period of time, did you ever meet his father?
No.
And during that same 10-year period of time, did you meet his mother?
Once.
And did you have any interactions with her for that 10 years other than that one time?
No.
And you had no interactions with his father?
Correct.
And am I correct? You didn't even know he had sisters?
Correct.
So at no time when you guys were living in Baton Rouge did any of the family come and visit?
Correct.
And did you ever see mail come to the apartment from any of the family members?
No.
Presents?
No. So the jury heard about Joel's best friend, then his possible isolation from his family. His half-sisters testified earlier in the trial about how he seemed different at Thanksgiving this year. Happier, less isolated. Prosecutors argued this was a man who had already bought the chemicals and been to carry out the murders. The defense didn't call any witnesses to the stand. Joel decided not to testify.
All right, and you do understand, if you wanted to, regardless of what your attorneys advise you, that you certainly could. That decision is completely yours. You understand that, Mr. Guy?
Yes.
And so it's your decision, after being informed and discussing this with your attorneys, to not testify in this case. Is that correct? All right, thank you, sir.
With the state's evidence presented, the only thing left for the jury to hear were closing arguments. Prosecutor Hector Ian Sanchez started by trying to answer the obvious question: why? What motive could a son have for doing this to his parents?
What's the motive here? We don't have the burden to prove the motive, but the motive's pretty apparent in this case, and the motive is the money. He wants $500,000 that he is the second in line to get if Lisa Guy untimely dies.
Prosecutors say that money is the motivation here. Joel Guy Jr. would get $500,000 in life insurance if Lisa Guy died, which he would need if his parents planned to cut him off like his half-sisters claimed. The prosecution had called scientists, analysts, and detectives to the stand, but there was little evidence of Joel's rage or anger towards his family. In fact, the defense used this fact to their advantage for their closing arguments.
That weekend, Joel Guy was outgoing, friendly, and happy in a way Michelle Tyler had never seen him before. Outgoing, friendly, and happy. That was not a man about to commit a homicide. Outgoing, friendly, and happy. You saw it in the picture from the front porch. Smiling, happy. That's who Joel Guy was that weekend. He was not someone planning on committing a murder. And remember the facts of the case. His father was stabbed at least 41 times, his mother at least 32 times. That is anger. That is rage. That is not happy and outgoing. We heard family testimony that they planned to cut him off financially at Christmas. This was not Christmas. This was not when that was going to occur. That's why we have to look at every fact to see if this adds up. Because just from that very start, outgoing, friendly, and happy does not add up to what happened here. Rage, anger, and death.
Defense attorney John Halstead showed the jury a family photo from that very weekend. Joel Guy Jr. was smiling, standing with his parents. Halstead said the seemingly happy man in that photo could not be responsible for the gruesome deaths. He said Joel never admitted anything to his former roommate, Michael McCracken, and that the jury should consider his touch DNA was only found on the outside of the notebook with the murder instructions. On rebuttal, prosecutor Leslie Nasios was quick to reiterate that you don't have to be an expert to realize that the notebook does belong to the defendant. She was also quick to throw the defense's words right back at them in the last few moments of her argument.
Outgoing, friendly, and happy. Yeah, I bet he was. That he felt very outgoing and friendly and happy. Michelle Tyler told you that that was unusual. Okay, his demeanor on Thanksgiving was strange. He was usually distant. He was usually kept to himself. He didn't interact a lot with his family. He didn't have much of a relationship with his family. And there are reasons for that. And I think Mr. Stevens explored that with Mr. Guy's only friend, Michael McCracken. He lived away. He lived in Baton Rouge. He didn't live in Burgonsville. He didn't live in Knoxville. He had no reason really to have close relations with people who were older than him and who lived in different places. Ladies and gentlemen, despite that, these were people who were close, a caring family, a loving family, and they all knew each other's business, and they all knew exactly what was going on. And they all knew about the plans that Joel and Lisa had to retire and to take a break from life, okay? And why would he be outgoing and happy when he had been distant from them in the past? Well, I submit to you, it's because he was getting ready to get what he wanted, to implement his plan. He wanted to deflect attention from himself. He wanted to be nice. He was playing nice. In his mind, he's thinking, well, I'm going to not give them any reason to suspect me. I'm not going to act like I'm mad. I'm not going to show them I'm mad. I'm going to make an effort to talk to the grandsons, my nephews. I'm going I'm going to give away my toys. I'm going to give away my Beanie Babies. I'm going to speak to Michelle. I'm going to interact. I'm going to make this a nice holiday for everyone. So when ultimately the bodies are discovered, people are going to reflect back, and they're going to be able to say, well, Joel Michael was nice that weekend. He was in a good mood. He was okay. But it was an act. It was a show. And it was to deflect attention from himself.
Nacio started listing out the items Joel bought using his mother's money.
She paid for those garbage bags. She paid for his socks. She paid for his red potato salad that he got when he was buying his medical supplies, because he worked up an appetite after all of that, and he was in the mood for some red potato salad. Think about that. Think about that. She paid for the tubs that she and her husband disintegrated in. She worked all those years at Jacob Engineering to put him up, to keep him in his lifelong whatever program he's in at LSU. And you know what, ladies and gentlemen? She was still looking for a job in Seguinsville. Do you remember Renee Charles telling you that? She wasn't going to cut him off. She was going to find a job up there. She was going to keep supporting him. Oh, my goodness. She gave him everything he wanted. And then she had the nerve to tell him that they retired and needed a break.
The jury left to deliberate. Joel Guy Jr. was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, 3 counts of felony first-degree murder, and 2 counts of abuse of a corpse. He faced life in prison if found guilty. The state wasn't seeking the death penalty, but while awaiting trial, Joel had sent a letter to Judge Steve Sword, asking for him to be sentenced to death. In September 2020, the month his trial was set to start, Joel Guy Jr. sent handwritten notes to the Knox County Court asking to be put to death if he was found guilty of these crimes. His note said, quote, "In the event that I am eventually found guilty of first-degree murder, I contend that the waiver above, if permitted by the court, would free the court to sentence me to death, imprisonment for life without the possibility of parole, or imprisonment for life." The court didn't grant his request, and Joel would not face the death penalty. The jury was now deliberating his guilt, and if found guilty, he would face prison for the rest of his life. On October 2nd, 2020, they made their decision. 4 days after first entering the courtroom, they had now decided Joel's fate.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Joel Michael Guy, guilty of first-degree premeditated murder of Joel Guy Sr.
Count number 2, please.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Joel Michael Guy, guilty of first-degree premeditated murder of Lisa Guy.
Guilty on all counts. While the family behind Joel wept, he stayed sitting with his hands neatly folded on his chest, sometimes sipping from his water and looking unsurprised. The time had come for the family to share their stories about how this crime had affected them.
My name is Angela Crane, and Joel and Lisa Guy were my parents. I wasn't prepared to speak today. It's like for 4 years, I felt like I've pushed it down, like it's not actually happening. But it's real. They're gone.
Angela Crane, Joel's half-sister, said her dad was her best friend, that she'll never hear his laugh again, hug him again, or hear his same stories over and over. She said she was robbed of him walking her down the aisle. She said Lisa was her best friend too, the most loving and giving person she had ever met. She broke into sobs as she spoke. Meanwhile, Joel, sitting not far from her, sat silently listening. Then Michelle Tyler, his other half-sister, spoke to the court. saying she refused to forgive him.
I rest easy knowing that God is okay with my choice not to forgive someone that has murdered my parents.
She described the pain of not only herself, but of her kids. She said no one will ever understand what it's like to explain how her mother's head ended up in a boiling pot, and how her kids' grandparents were chopped up and put in acid. She said she mourns terribly for her dad and grieves and rages for Lisa, wondering if Lisa realized the love of her life, her only son she had, was about to murder her. Joel was sentenced that same day. He was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences for the 2 counts of first-degree murder and the 3 counts of felony first-degree murder. He would not be sentenced on 2 counts of abuse of a corpse until mid-November. In between these sentences, he made headlines once more by writing yet another note to the court, saying he should be placed in solitary confinement. He wrote that he was having fantasies about gouging out the eyes of another inmate. Joel sent the letter 6 days after the jury found him guilty of murdering his parents. When in front of Judge Sword for his final sentencing, the judge wasn't sympathetic to his cries for help. He said Joel had a sick and depraved mind. He went on to say that, quote, Mr. Guy thinks he's smarter than he is. He's threatening to blind another cellmate to get a cell to himself. He asked Joel to stand before giving him the maximum sentence for the 2 counts of abuse of a corpse, on top of his life sentences. Joel Guy Jr. will never leave prison, and his family will never be the same. And that's all for this episode. As always, I'd love to hear what you think about this case. Let me know by joining the conversation on Instagram @CourtJunkie, by tweeting me @CourtJunkiePod, or by emailing me at podcast@CourtJunkie.com. Also, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I announced last week that I'll be releasing monthly recap episodes with one of my great friends, Brittany, on the main Court Junkie feed, but we're also releasing the videos from our Zoom calls on YouTube. So if you'd rather watch us chat about Court Junkie episodes, as well as cases we're currently following and other true crime and legal happenings, make sure to subscribe at youtube.com/courtjunkie. But as I said, we'll also be releasing the audio version on the Court Junkie main feed each month. Today's episode was researched and written by Stephanie Horton from the Law and Crime Trial Network. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.